Hey everybody, welcome to KimmelsIrishPub.com. Time for another movie review. Tonight's movie is going to be one of those obscure movies, so it's not one of the most notable ones that I've been spoiling you with recently. This one's called The Drowning, and it's about a psychiatrist who has to face his past when he meets up with a patient who was recently released out of prison for committing murder a while ago. So not too much more than that I know about it. I'll start watching it and tell you more about it. But it stars Julia Stiles from the Bourne series, Jason Bourne series. So she's in that. She also made a number of movies with Freddie Prinze Jr. back in the day. So you might recognize 10 Things I Hate About You with Heath Ledger. So some of the movies that she's been in, if you don't recognize the name. And then Josh Charles. Josh Charles, I'm not sure everything that he is. I think he was on like network TV. I think it was a TV show he was on. But I remember him from Crossing the Bridge, which also starred one of the Baldwins, don't know which one, and Ross was in it from Friends. Crossing the Bridge, very old movie. My sister showed it to me. I really enjoyed it. So if you have time, check that out. But that's not what we're here about. We're here about The Drowning. So I'm going to get into it a little bit, and I'll check back in and explain to you a little bit more about what it's about once I figure it out. Everybody, quick check in here. We're watching The Drowning, and it is at the 23-minute and 17-second mark. A couple of things I forgot to mention in the beginning was IMDb has this rated at a 4.4, and Rotten Tomatoes, the critics have it at a 50%, which is more rotten and fresh, and the users have it at a 26% rotten. So not a lot of high expectations for this movie. Some clarifications on the synopsis. The beginning, it shows right in the beginning, somebody, a gentleman looks like he's going to commit suicide, which is odd. It looks like he's just jumping off a ledge into the water. He does take off his shoes and his jacket and things like that, but if you're jumping off a bridge, I get it, but he's just jumping off a ledge into the water, so I guess he just wasn't going to swim, and that's how he was going to commit suicide, whatever. And the therapist jumps in and saves him, and everything's great. They end up having the wrong jackets when they take him away into the ambulance, so he goes back to the hospital, the guy who rescued him, and to switch jackets, and he realizes it's a previous patient of his. So he's a psychiatrist for children. And he had worked with this person before when he was a child, and evidently he is the one who was convicted of murder. And now this the murderer is trying to inject himself into the therapist's life again, and that's where we are so far. So you can kind of tell where it's going. You've seen these types of movies before, a little bit of a different twist, but that's where we are right now. I'll watch a little bit more, and I'll check back in. Everybody, do one more check-in before the final credits. It's the 1 hour, 9-minute, and 44-second mark of the movie. And so what has happened so far, as I mentioned, he comes in contact with an old patient of his who actually saves him from trying to commit suicide, and realizes that he was his patient previously. He was put away for jail for murder. There's not a lot of, there's some question marks around that. The patient keeps saying he was innocent the whole time. There was evidence there, so you're not sure what really happened there, but he did go to jail for a period of time in prison. At 11 years old, it actually happened. So he's still, and then now he's inserting himself into his therapist's life, and the therapist is trying to help him. As he's doing it, he's kind of peeling away the onion of what has been happening and what this person is all about. So he's starting to come to the realization that he might be a really bad guy. In the meantime, of course, what happens in these kinds of movies, this patient of his now starts a relationship, not a sexual relationship anymore, a romantic relationship with the therapist's wife, who is Julia Stiles. So they start talking and becoming friends in a sense, because he's actually, making them run into each other so that he can build that relationship. So she has kind of that friendship with him, and the husband is obviously not liking that. So that's where we are in the movie, where now, you can tell that the wife's going to get mad at the therapist, her husband, because he is, shooing the patient away. But we got 29 minutes left, so I'm sure a lot's going to come about in this last 29 minutes, and I'll check back in at the credits. All right, see you then. So we're at the credits of The Drowning. Is finally over. I think throughout the entire movie, the big question is, is the patient or the kid, yeah, I think he goes by two names, Ian or Danny. Danny was his original name, but when he went to prison, he came out, he changed it to Ian. So is he really guilty of what they accused him of when he was 11 years old? Is he a good person? Has he turned his life around? That's the underlining question of this entire movie. And there's a lot of ambiguity. I don't know if I said that right, but you know what I mean, throughout this movie, which is kind of strange. It's hard to put together at times. I'm not sure. They make a lot of assumptions. Still interesting. Something I haven't seen before. You get the, you've seen the theme before, where there's a somewhat bad guy who makes a relationship with, somebody's wife, and then, inserts themselves, that whole thing, to try and take advantage of the situation. And that's basically what happened here. It just happens to do with a child murderer and a therapist, is pretty much it. The ending of the movie was strange, to say the least. Without ruining too much of it, the therapist is looking for Danny at the end of the movie. He goes back to the scene of the crime where he finds him, and then it's the whole standoff between the two of them and what's going to happen and who's going to come at the end to rescue it all. Very strange situation there. I don't want to do any spoilers in case you do want to watch this movie. And then the ultimate ending, it jumps forward, in years, 14 months after the final showdown or standoff, if you will, and and then how it concludes at the end that made it a little bit interesting, and it kind of ties it all together, which I'll share with you in a minute after I give you my rating. So I'm still, I think it's an hour and 39 minutes. There's not enough content in it to make it an hour and 39-minute movie. I mean, I know you can't make a movie too much shorter than that, or it wouldn't be a movie, it'd be just a TV show. But I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6. I saw what they tried to do there. It wasn't as bad as everybody else laid it out to be. 4.4 on IMDb is very low. But they really did try and stretch it out and really make a movie out of it. So I'm going to stay with a 6. And now I'm going to do a couple of spoilers. So if you're interested in watching this movie, pause it now or turn it off. Okay, so the spoiler at the end. So if you remember, in the beginning I was talking about how the kid jumps off the wall into the water to commit suicide. It's like, you're going to jump off a bridge or something like that. That seems more plausible than just jumping in the water. But I think the assumption there is that maybe he doesn't know how to swim. The therapist says that he is a strong swimmer. He's the one who saves him. So that makes sense there. So maybe Danny really didn't know how to swim. So the conclusion of this movie, it jumps 14 months in the future. And basically throughout the entire movie, the therapist, the main character, was writing a book about, all of the kids that he has worked with and all of his patients. And so now he's doing a book tour, and he's in Portland, Oregon, doing a book signing. And who shows up but Danny? So at the end, Danny doesn't go back to jail or anything like that. There's no problem with Danny. He just moves to Portland, Oregon, where he enrolls in school, where the therapist happens to be doing a book signing. So really odd there, but then they interact again. And then finally he says to him, again, we're still not sure if Danny's a good person or if he's not a good person, but he offers him a ride. Hey, can I give you a ride somewhere? I'm going back to the airport, which is strange. He still doesn't trust him. But that's when it all comes to the final end, and they're driving down the road. Danny is now sharing with the therapist how he knows a little bit more about his life than he should. He knows that now his wife is pregnant, and it's with a boy. So the therapist is like, how do you know all this, and that kind of stuff. And the thoughts start swirling in his mind, and then he wrecks the car. Again, spoiler alert, but I told you that. He wrecks the car, and he wrecks the car into a body of water. And then he swims to shore, and there's no sight of Danny. So I think that's where it ties it all together and says, in the beginning, he tried to commit suicide because he didn't know how to swim. So the therapist knew this, and in the end, he wrecked the car into the water to make it look like an accident. Danny can't swim. He's trapped in the water and more than likely drowns. So you know, kind of interesting how they did that there, but again, not a great movie. I don't want to go on too much further. Kind of keep it short for you so you don't have to wait this long to determine if you want to watch this movie or not. But again, interested in your comments. Would love for you to subscribe to my channel. But more importantly, I'd like to hear what you think about these reviews that I do, and you know, some feedback would be excellent. But that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining KimmelsIrishPub.com.